Marcus Hendricks had no idea that the woman watching him from across the fence would soon transform his daughter's entire world. As he hammered crooked nails into warped pallets 40 feet up in an old oak tree, sweat dripping into his eyes, he couldn't have imagined that his neighbor possessed the power to turn his makeshift creation into something extraordinary. What started as a desperate father's promise to his 7-year-old daughter was about to become the catalyst for a movement that would touch thousands of children's lives. But first, Marcus had to survive building the most dangerous treehouse in suburban history. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The morning sun cast long shadows across Maple Street as Marcus Hendricks stood in his backyard, staring up at the massive oak tree that had drawn his daughter's attention for months. 8-year-old Lily had been asking for a treehouse since they'd moved into the modest 2-bedroom rental 6 months ago, her requests growing more persistent after her best friend got one for her birthday. Marcus had been putting her off with promises of soon and when Daddy saves enough money, but yesterday's conversation had changed everything. Sarah's treehouse has a rope ladder and windows with real glass, Lily had said, her voice carrying that particular note of longing that pierced straight through his heart. She said I could play in it sometimes, but it would be better if we had our own. The way she'd looked at him, with those wide brown eyes so much like her mother's, had settled the matter. Promise made. And Marcus Hendricks never broke promises to his daughter. The problem was money. Working 2 jobs, his morning shift at the hardware store and evening hours doing freelance carpentry, barely covered rent, utilities, and groceries. The divorce had left him with debt and a determination to provide stability for Lily, but luxuries like custom treehouses were out of reach. That's where his stubborn pride kicked in. He'd built cabinets and decks before Rachel left. Surely he could figure out a treehouse. How hard could it be? Standing in the pre-dawn quiet, coffee mug in hand, Marcus surveyed his resources. Behind the garage sat a pile of wooden pallets he'd rescued from behind the hardware store, their weathered surfaces telling stories of countless shipments. A bucket of mixed nails, some bent, some rusty, but serviceable. A coil of rope that had seen better days. His grandfather's old toolbox, inherited when the old man passed, contained hand tools that had built half the farmhouses in the county decades ago. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. The plan forming in his head was simple enough. Build a platform between the 3 main branches, about 12 feet up, add walls made from pallet boards, throw on a roof of salvaged plywood, and call it done. He'd sketched it out on a napkin the night before, while Lily slept. Though sketch was generous, it looked more like a child's drawing of a box with a triangle on top. But Lily would love it, and that's all that mattered. By 7 a.m., Marcus had dragged his materials into position beneath the oak tree. The trunk was solid, easily 4 feet in diameter, with branches that spread wide enough to support a decent-sized platform. He'd already identified his anchor points, 3 sturdy limbs that formed a natural triangle about 15 feet off the ground, higher than he'd initially planned, but the only spot where the branches were thick enough to bear weight safely. The first challenge came immediately. Getting the lumber up into the tree required a pulley system he didn't have and couldn't afford. Instead, Marcus rigged a rope and tackle arrangement using his climbing harness from his rock climbing days and a series of loops around the higher branches. Each board had to be hauled up individually, a process that took 20 minutes per piece and left his shoulders aching before he'd even begun the real work. Lily emerged from the house around 8:30, still in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed elephant. She stood at the base of the tree, head tilted back to watch her father work. "It's going to be really high up," she observed, a note of concern creeping into her voice. "High enough to see the whole neighborhood," Marcus called down, securing another pallet board to his makeshift platform. "You'll be able to wave at Mrs. Patterson's cat from up here. Will it be safe?" The question stopped him cold. Safety. In his eagerness to fulfill his promise, he'd focused on structure and materials, but had he really thought through the safety implications? The height alone was concerning, and his construction methods were, if he was honest, somewhat improvised. But backing down now wasn't an option. Lily was counting on him. "Of course it'll be safe," he said, injecting confidence he didn't entirely feel into his voice. "Daddy knows what he's doing." As the morning progressed, Marcus's optimism began to waver. The pallet boards, while free, presented challenges he hadn't anticipated. Some were warped from weather exposure, creating gaps that would need filling. Others had nails protruding at odd angles, requiring careful removal and repositioning. His simple platform design grew increasingly complex as he worked around the tree's natural irregularities. The oak tree, magnificent as it was, hadn't grown with treehouse construction in mind. The 3 branches he'd chosen as anchor points weren't quite level with each other, forcing him to build wedges and shims to create a stable base. What should have been a straightforward rectangular platform became an oddly shaped pentagon, following the tree's organic geometry rather than human engineering principles. By noon, Marcus had managed to create something resembling a floor. It was crooked, certainly, and the gaps between boards were wider than ideal, but it held his weight when he tested it carefully. Lily had been joined by several neighborhood children who gathered below like an audience, offering commentary and suggestions that ranged from helpful to wildly impractical. "My dad used power tools when he built our deck," offered Jeremy from 3 houses down. "You could borrow them." "My mom says old wood has splinters that can get infected," added Sarah, the friend with the enviable treehouse. "You should sand everything." Marcus gritted his teeth and continued working. Power tools and sanders cost money he didn't have, and borrowing equipment felt like admitting failure before he'd really tried. Besides, Keats had been playing in rough tree houses for generations without major incident. A few splinters were part of childhood. The afternoon brought new challenges. Building walls, while perched 15 feet in the air, proved significantly more difficult than he'd anticipated. Each board had to be measured, cut, and positioned, while maintaining his balance on the uneven platform, all while wearing his climbing harness clipped to various branches for safety. The work was slow, methodical, and increasingly frustrating as the summer heat climbed toward 90 degrees. It was during one particularly challenging moment, when Marcus was trying to attach a wall panel while holding it in place with his knee and reaching for a nail with his free hand, that he first noticed her. A woman had emerged onto the porch of the house, directly behind his, the 2-story colonial that had been empty until recently. She sat in one of 2 wicker chairs, a coffee mug in her hands despite the heat, watching his efforts with what appeared to be professional interest. Marcus had heard the moving trucks a few weeks ago but hadn't met his new neighbor yet. From his elevated position, he could see she was perhaps 45, with gray-streaked brown hair pulled back in a casual ponytail, wearing jeans and a simple white button-down shirt. What struck him most was her stillness. While the children below chattered and played, moving constantly like small hurricanes, she sat motionless, observing. Their eyes met briefly across the yards, and she raised her mug in a small salute. Marcus nodded back, then returned to his struggle with the stubborn wall panel. When he looked again a few minutes later, she was gone. The walls went up slowly, each one a lesson in adaptation and compromise. The pallets, designed for shipping rather than construction, required extensive modification to serve as building materials. Marcus found himself removing boards, cutting new pieces to fill gaps, and inventing solutions as problems arose. What he lacked in proper materials and tools, he made up for with determination and creative problem-solving. By late afternoon, 3 walls were in place, creating the basic shell of what was starting to look like an actual treehouse. It was unmistakably amateur work, with visible gaps, misaligned boards, and a distinctly handmade appearance, but it was solid enough and clearly built with love. Lily's excitement was infectious, and even Marcus began to feel a sense of accomplishment despite the project's obvious imperfections. The roof presented the final major challenge. Marcus had planned to use sheets of plywood, but the cost had proven prohibitive, even for the cheapest grade. Instead, he'd managed to acquire several pieces of corrugated metal roofing from a demolition site, dented and weathered, but functional. Installing them required careful positioning to ensure water runoff while maintaining the structural integrity of his amateur engineering. As evening approached, Marcus made the decision to call it a day. The roof was partially complete, enough to provide basic shelter, and exhaustion was making him careless with tools and safety protocols. Better to finish in the morning when he was fresh than to risk an accident in fatigue. "Can I go up and see it?" Lily asked as he descended the rope ladder he'd rigged between two branches. "Tomorrow," Marcus said, his voice hoarse from shouting instructions and breathing sawdust all day. "Let Daddy finish a few more things first. Make sure everything's perfect." That night, after Lily was asleep, Marcus stood at his kitchen window looking out at the treehouse silhouette against the darkening sky. In the fading light, it looked almost professional, the rough edges and imperfections hidden by shadows. Tomorrow he'd add the finishing touches, a few safety rails, maybe a small door, and then Lily could finally claim her castle in the sky. He was washing the day's grime from his hands when he noticed the light in his neighbor's kitchen window. She was there again, looking out at the tree, and this time she seemed to be taking notes on a small pad. When she noticed him watching, she waved, a gesture that somehow conveyed approval rather than mere politeness. Marcus waved back, wondering what she thought of his amateur construction project. The next morning brought perfect weather for finishing the treehouse. Marcus was up early, eager to complete the project and see Lily's reaction. The final push required only a few hours of work, adding the remaining roof panels, installing a proper door cut from one of the pallet sides, and constructing a simple safety rail around the platform's perimeter. As he worked, the woman next door appeared on her porch again, this time with a sketch pad and what looked like professional drawing tools. Her attention seemed focused on the treehouse itself, rather than his construction efforts, occasionally making quick sketches or notes. Marcus found her presence oddly comforting, as if having a witness to his work somehow validated the project's importance. The moment of truth came just after lunch. Marcus had completed his final safety check, testing every board and connection point, ensuring the rope ladder was properly secured and the platform could easily support multiple children's weight. Everything seemed solid enough, though the overall appearance remained decidedly homemade. "Okay, Princess," he called to Lily, who had been watching impatiently from below. "Ready for the grand tour?" Lily's ascent up the rope ladder was careful but confident, her small hands gripping each rung with determination. Marcus climbed beside her, ready to assist if needed, but she managed the journey independently. The moment she stepped onto the platform and looked around at her new domain, her face lit up with pure joy. "Daddy, it's perfect!" she exclaimed, rushing to each small window opening to survey her elevated kingdom. "I can see everything. There's Mrs. Patterson's garden, and the school playground, and, oh, there's the lady who's been watching you build this." Marcus followed her gaze to the neighboring porch, where his mysterious observer sat with her sketch pad. At Lily's enthusiastic wave, the woman stood and walked to the fence line between their properties. "That's quite an impressive structure," she called up, her voice carrying clearly in the still air. "Your daughter seems pleased with the result." "She's easy to please," Marcus replied, climbing down to ground level for better conversation. "I'm Marcus Hendricks, by the way. I should have introduced myself when you moved in." "Diana Chen," she responded, extending her hand across the fence. "I've been enjoying watching your construction process. Very resourceful use of materials." There was something in her tone that suggested professional appreciation rather than mere neighborly politeness. Up close, Marcus could see that her sketch pad contained detailed drawings of his treehouse from multiple angles, with notes and measurements that seemed far more sophisticated than casual interest would warrant. "Are you in construction?" he asked, curious about her obvious expertise. Diana smiled, an expression that held depths Marcus couldn't quite read. "Something like that. I work with buildings and spaces, how people interact with them, especially children's spaces." Before Marcus could ask for clarification, Lily's voice called down from above. "Daddy, can Sarah come see the treehouse, please?" The next hour brought a parade of neighborhood children, each eager to explore the new addition to their play landscape. Despite its rough appearance, the treehouse proved popular, offering views and possibilities that more polished playground equipment couldn't match. Marcus watched from below, pride mixing with concern, as he monitored the structure's performance under the stress of multiple excited children. Diana Chen remained at the fence line, now openly sketching the children's interactions with the space. Her notes seemed to focus on how they moved through the structure, where they gathered, What features drew their attention? To Marcus's untrained eye, her observations looked remarkably systematic, almost scientific in their detail. As the afternoon wore on, and the children eventually dispersed to dinners and homework, Diana approached Marcus again. "Would you mind if I asked you some questions about your construction process? I'm particularly interested in your material choices and structural solutions." Marcus laughed, gesturing at the collection of mismatched lumber and improvised connections. "I'm not sure there was much of a process, more like making it up as I went along. The materials were free, which made them perfect for my budget. That resourcefulness is exactly what interests me," Diana said. "You've created something that serves its purpose beautifully using available resources and ingenuity. That's actually quite sophisticated design thinking, even if you don't realize it. You talk like someone who knows about this stuff professionally." Diana's pause was brief, but noticeable. "I do work in architecture and design, yes. Mostly public spaces, community projects, things that bring people together." The conversation was interrupted by Lily calling for help, reaching something she'd dropped through the platform boards. By the time Marcus had climbed up to retrieve her stuffed elephant and climbed back down, Diana had returned to her house, leaving him with more questions than answers about his enigmatic neighbor. That evening, as Marcus tucked Lily into bed, her excitement about the treehouse was infectious. She'd already planned elaborate games and adventures, assigned roles to her stuffed animals for treehouse tea parties, and begun composing a list of friends to invite for sleepovers in her elevated fortress. "Daddy," she said as he turned off her bedside lamp, "the nice lady next door was drawing pictures of my treehouse. Do you think she likes it?" "I think she does, sweetheart. She seemed very interested in how it was built. Maybe she wants to build one for her kids too." Marcus kissed her forehead, thinking about Diana's professional attention to his amateur project. "Maybe she does. Now get some sleep. You've got a big day of treehouse adventures tomorrow." The following week passed quietly, with Lily spending every possible moment in her treehouse, and Marcus catching up on the carpentry jobs he'd postponed for the construction project. He noticed Diana in her yard occasionally, tending a small garden or reading on her porch, but their paths didn't cross again until the following Saturday morning. Marcus was mowing the lawn when a van pulled into Diana's driveway, followed by a sedan and a small truck. Professional-looking people began unloading equipment and materials, surveying tools and measuring devices that belonged on construction sites rather than suburban driveways. Diana emerged from her house carrying rolled papers that looked distinctly like architectural drawings. Curiosity overcame politeness, and Marcus shut off his mower to observe the proceedings. The group gathered around Diana as she unrolled her plans, pointing toward his backyard and the treehouse visible above the fence line. Their discussion was animated, with frequent gestures and what appeared to be considerable excitement about whatever project they were planning. After 20 minutes of consultation, the group approached Marcus's gate. Diana led the way, her professional demeanor more apparent now that she was clearly in charge of whatever was happening. "Marcus, I hope you don't mind the intrusion," she said. "I'd like to introduce you to some colleagues of mine. We have a proposition that might interest you." The introductions revealed an impressive collection of credentials. James Patterson, structural engineer. Maria Santos, landscape architect. Robert Kim, project manager for commercial construction. This wasn't a casual neighborhood gathering. This was a professional team assembled for a specific purpose. "Diana has been telling us about your treehouse project," James explained. "We're particularly impressed with your innovative solutions to structural challenges and resource limitations." Marcus felt heat rising in his cheeks. "I appreciate the compliment, but it's just a basic treehouse. Nothing special about it." "That's where you're wrong," Maria interjected. "What you've created is exactly the kind of authentic, child-centered design that formal playground equipment often lacks. Kids don't want perfect, they want interesting." Diana stepped forward, her sketchpad open to detailed drawings of his treehouse. "Marcus, I haven't been entirely honest about who I am and what I do. My name is Diana Chen, and I'm the principal architect for Chen Associates. We specialize in public spaces and community projects, particularly play environments for children." The name hit Marcus like a physical blow. Chen Associates was legendary in architectural circles, known for innovative community projects that had revolutionized how cities approached public spaces. He'd read articles about their work in magazines at the hardware store, studied their designs during his brief stint in community college studying construction management. Diana Chen wasn't just a successful architect, she was one of the most respected designers in the country. I've been watching you build this treehouse because it represents everything I've been trying to achieve in my professional work, Diana continued. Authentic, child-focused design that prioritizes play and imagination over aesthetic perfection. You've created something that speaks to children's actual needs and desires, not adult concepts of what childhood should look like. Marcus struggled to process this information. But it's just pallets and nails. I made it up as I went along. That's exactly the point, Robert added. You weren't constrained by conventional thinking about playground equipment or child safety regulations. You built something that serves its purpose beautifully because you were focused on making your daughter happy, not teen. Meeting industry standards. Diana opened another section of her sketch pad, revealing detailed architectural drawings that took Marcus's breath away. His rough treehouse was there, but transformed through professional design into something magnificent. The basic structure remained recognizable, but every element had been refined, strengthened, and enhanced while maintaining the essential character that made it special. We'd like to propose a collaboration, Diana said. My foundation has been developing a program to create play spaces for underserved communities, places where children don't have access to adequate recreational facilities. Your treehouse design, properly engineered and constructed with appropriate materials, could serve as a model for installations in parks, schools, and community centers across the country. The scope of what she was suggesting slowly dawned on Marcus. His weekend project, born from a father's love and financial necessity, could potentially touch thousands of children's lives. The idea was overwhelming and terrifying in equal measure. What exactly are you proposing? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. James pulled out a tablet, swiping through a presentation that had clearly been prepared in advance. We'd like to completely rebuild your treehouse using professional materials and techniques, incorporating your innovative design elements into a structure that meets all safety standards while preserving the authentic character that makes it special. End quote. The rebuilt treehouse would serve as our prototype, Maria continued. We'd document the construction process, create detailed plans, and develop guidelines for replication in various environments and climates. More importantly, Diana added, you'd be our consultant throughout the process. Your insights into authentic play space design are exactly what we need to ensure our installations truly serve children, rather than adult preconceptions about childhood. Marcus looked up at his treehouse, where Lily and two friends were engaged in an elaborate game involving pirates, princesses, and a stuffed animal rescue mission. The structure that had seemed adequate just minutes ago now appeared shabby and potentially dangerous compared to the professional version outlined in Diana's drawings. What would happen to Lily's treehouse during this process? We'd build the new version right alongside the existing one, Robert explained. Lily would never be without her play space, and she'd get to watch professional construction techniques in action, educational opportunity, and uninterrupted playtime. There's also a financial component, Diana said carefully. This project would be funded through my foundation, but we'd want to compensate you for your design contribution and ongoing consultation. It wouldn't make you rich, but it would recognize your creative input appropriately. The offer was generous, more than generous, but Marcus found himself hesitating. His treehouse was rough around the edges, certainly, but it was also authentically his and Lily's creation. Would professional reconstruction maintain the essential character that made it special, or would polish and perfection somehow diminish its heart? Can I think about it? He asked. This is a lot to process. Of course, Diana replied. Take all the time you need. We're not going anywhere, and this project is too important to rush. As the professional team packed up their materials and prepared to leave, Diana lingered behind. Marcus, I want you to understand something. In 30 years of architectural practice, I've designed libraries, museums, community centers, and countless playgrounds. But I've never seen children respond to a space the way the neighborhood kids respond to your treehouse. That's not accident. That's genius. That evening, after Lily was asleep, Marcus sat on his back porch, looking up at the treehouse silhouetted against the star-filled sky. Diana's words echoed in his mind, challenging his assumptions about his own capabilities and the value of his amateur effort. Could something born from necessity and love really serve as inspiration for professional designers? His phone buzzed with a text message from his ex-wife Rachel. "Louie called me about her treehouse today. Sounds like you've built something special. She's very proud of her daddy." The message, rare praise from a relationship that had ended in mutual disappointment, somehow crystallized his thinking. This wasn't about architecture or professional recognition or even financial compensation. This was about creating something meaningful for children, starting with his own daughter and potentially extending to thousands of others who deserved safe, imaginative places to play. The next morning, Marcus found Diana in her garden, tending plants with the same careful attention she'd applied to studying his construction project. "I've made my decision," he said without preamble. "I'd like to move forward with your proposal, but I have conditions." Diana straightened, giving him her full attention. "I'm listening." "First, Lily has to approve any changes to the design. This is her treehouse, and if she doesn't like something, we find a different solution." "Absolutely. Child input is central to our entire Kai philosophy." Second, the neighborhood kids get to watch and learn during construction. If this is supposed to be about serving children, they should understand how it's built. Educational outreach was already part of our plan. Third, I want to be involved in every installation that comes after this prototype, not just as a consultant, but as someone who helps build them. These communities deserve to know that someone who understands their BS situation is part of the process. Diana's smile was warm and genuine. "Those conditions aren't just acceptable, they're perfect. They tell me we've chosen the right partner for this project." The handshake they exchanged felt like the beginning of something much larger than either of them had initially envisioned. As Diana outlined the timeline and logistics for the reconstruction project, Marcus realized that his weekend carpentry adventure was about to become something he'd never imagined possible. The transformation began the following Monday. Diana's team arrived with professional equipment, engineered lumber, and construction techniques that made Marcus's original efforts look quaint by comparison. But rather than dismissing his work, they studied every joint, every improvised solution, every adaptation he'd made to accommodate the tree's natural geometry. "Your approach to working with the tree's structure rather than against it is brilliant," James observed as he examined the platform supports. "Most treehouse builders try to impose geometric perfection on organic forms. You let the tree dictate the design, which created something much more interesting and stable." The new construction incorporated Marcus's insights while adding professional engineering and safety features. The platform became larger and more stable, while maintaining the irregular shape that followed the tree's branches. The walls received proper framing and weatherproofing, while preserving the rustic character that made them inviting rather than institutional. Lily supervised the entire process with the authority of someone whose approval was essential to the project's success. When the professional builders suggested adding a conventional staircase, she insisted on keeping the rope ladder because climbing up is half the adventure. When they proposed standard playground safety rails, she requested lower barriers that wouldn't block her view of the neighborhood while still preventing falls. The neighborhood children became regular visitors to the construction site, asking questions, offering suggestions, and occasionally being recruited as small consultants on design decisions. Their input proved invaluable, revealing play patterns and preferences that adult designers might have overlooked. "They use the corner spaces differently than we expected," Maria noted after watching the children play in the partially completed structure. "The tight spaces are just as important as the open areas. They become hideouts and secret meeting places." 3 weeks after construction began, the new treehouse was complete. From the ground, it looked remarkably similar to Marcus's original creation, maintaining the authentic character that had made it special. But closer inspection revealed professional craftsmanship throughout, from the precisely fitted joints to the weatherproof finish that would protect the structure for decades. The installation of safety features was seamless, integrated into the design rather than added as afterthoughts. Climbing routes were secure but challenging, encouraging physical development while preventing dangerous falls. Windows were sized and positioned to provide views while maintaining privacy for the various play activities children naturally gravitated toward. The grand reopening celebration brought together not just the neighborhood children but their parents, Diana's professional team, and representatives from the foundation that would fund future installations. But the real test came when Lily climbed the familiar rope ladder and stepped onto her transformed play space. "It's still my treehouse," she announced after a thorough inspection, "but now it's even better. It feels the same but different, like when you clean your room but don't move anything." Her approval was the validation Diana's team needed. Professional engineering and construction techniques had enhanced the structure without destroying the essential qualities that made it special. The project was ready to serve as a model for installations in communities across the country. Over the following months, Marcus found himself traveling to cities and towns he'd never expected to visit, helping Diana's team install tree houses in urban parks, suburban schools, and rural community centers. Each installation presented unique challenges and opportunities, requiring adaptations that drew on both his original insights and the professional expertise of the design team. In Detroit, they built a treehouse playground that incorporated elements from the city's automotive heritage, using materials and design motifs that connected children to their community's history, while providing modern play opportunities. In rural Montana, they created a structure that withstood harsh weather while serving children who had few other recreational options within miles of their homes. Each project reinforced the lesson Marcus had learned from Diana's initial observation: authentic design that prioritized children's actual needs over adult preconceptions created spaces that served their intended purpose beautifully. The key wasn't perfect materials or flawless construction, but understanding what children truly wanted from their play environments. The Foundation's documentation of each installation created a library of adaptations and innovations that made future projects more effective. Local communities contributed insights about climate, culture, and specific needs that resulted in designs far superior to any standardized playground equipment. As the program expanded, Marcus discovered that his role extended beyond construction consulting. Communities wanted to hear from someone who understood their resource limitations and had found creative solutions to common problems. His story of building something meaningful from salvaged materials resonated with parents and community leaders who faced similar constraints. The program's first annual report, published 18 months after Diana had first approached Marcus, documented installations in 47 communities across 12 states. More importantly, it included testimonials from parents, teachers, and community leaders about the impact these play spaces had on children's development and community engagement. "Our treehouse has become the heart of our neighborhood," wrote one parent from an installation in rural Alabama. "Children who had never played together before are now forming friendships that cross all the old boundaries. It's changed our entire community dynamic." Reading these reports, Marcus understood that Diana's vision had been even more ambitious than he'd initially realized. The treehouses weren't just play equipment, they were catalysts for community building, bringing together children and families who might otherwise remain isolated from each other. The project's success attracted attention from national media and philanthropic organizations. Articles in parenting magazines and educational journals highlighted the innovative approach to playground design, emphasizing the importance of authentic, child-centered thinking over conventional safety-first mentalities that often produced sterile, uninspiring play environments. Marcus found himself invited to conferences and workshops, sharing his story with audiences of architects, educators, and community planners. The transformation from weekend carpenter to recognized expert in child-centered design was surreal. But the core message remained simple: listen to children, understand their real needs, and create spaces that serve those needs authentically. The most meaningful recognition came from an unexpected source. Lily, now 10 years old and a veteran of countless treehouse adventures, was asked to speak at a conference about children's perspectives on play space design. Her presentation, delivered with the confidence of someone who had grown up watching professional designers seek her approval, emphasized the importance of preserving imperfection and challenge in play environments. Grown-ups want to make everything safe and perfect, she told an audience of professional designers, but kids want things to be interesting and a little bit scary. If you make it too easy, it's not fun anymore. Her words, recorded and shared widely, became a touchstone for the Foundation's design philosophy. The voice of a child who had experienced both amateur and professional construction, who understood the value of both approaches, provided insights that no adult expert could offer. 5 years after Diana first approached Marcus at his backyard fence, the Treehouse program had installed play structures in over 300 communities. Each installation remained unique, adapted to local conditions and needs, but all shared the core principles discovered in Marcus's original weekend project: authentic design, community input, and respect for children's natural play instincts. Marcus had become a full-time consultant for the Foundation, traveling constantly, but always returning home to the original Treehouse where it all began. The structure itself had become a pilgrimage site of sorts, visited by designers and educators from around the world who wanted to understand the origins of a movement that had transformed how communities approached children's play spaces. Standing in his backyard on a quiet Saturday morning, watching Lily and her friends engaged in the elaborate games that had inspired an international program, Marcus reflected on the journey that had begun with a simple day promise to his daughter. The rough treehouse he built from pallets and desperation had become the foundation for something far beyond his original imagination, but its heart remained unchanged. Children's laughter echoed from the branches above, the sound that had motivated every decision, every compromise, every innovation that had followed. Diana's professional expertise and resources had amplified the impact of his amateur effort, but the core insight remained his. Children deserved authentic spaces that respected their intelligence, their creativity, and their natural desire for adventure. The program's latest initiative involved training community members to build and maintain their own installations, spreading the knowledge and skills that would make the Treehouse model sustainable without constant professional intervention. Marcus found deep satisfaction in teaching others the construction techniques and design principles that had emerged from his original trial-and-error approach. The most important tool isn't in any toolbox, he told a group of parent volunteers preparing to build their community's treehouse. It's the willingness to listen to children and take their needs seriously. Everything else is just technique. As the volunteers dispersed to begin their own construction project, Marcus climbed the rope ladder to join Lily in the treehouse that had started everything. At 15 feet above the ground, surrounded by the evidence of professional craftsmanship built on amateur foundations, he understood that the most meaningful achievements often begin with the simplest motivations: love, determination, and the willingness to try something new. The view from the treehouse encompassed not just the neighborhood that had watched his original construction efforts, but a network of communities where children climbed similar rope ladders, explored similar hiding places, and experienced the same sense of elevated adventure that had made this project necessary. What had begun as one father's promise to his daughter had become a movement that touched thousands of children's lives, proving that authentic solutions to human needs could indeed change the world, one treehouse at a time. The evening sun cast long shadows across the backyard, the same shadows that had witnessed the beginning of this journey years earlier. But now those shadows fell across evidence of something much larger: a successful collaboration between amateur insight and professional expertise, a sustainable program that served communities across the country, and a simple truth about the power of paying attention to what children actually need, rather than what adults think they should want. The success of the Treehouse program had attracted unexpected partnerships. Major corporations began funding installations as part of their community outreach initiatives, while universities incorporated the design principles into their architecture and education programs. What started as a grassroots movement had evolved into a recognized methodology for creating child-centered spaces. Dr. Sarah Martinez, a child psychologist from Stanford University, had been studying the program's impact on childhood development for 2 years. Her research revealed measurable improvements in children's physical coordination, social skills, and creative problem-solving abilities in communities with treehouse installations. The data validated what Marcus and Diana had observed anecdotally. Authentic play spaces produced authentic developmental benefits. The children who regularly use these treehouses show increased confidence in physical challenges, more sophisticated cooperative play behaviors, and enhanced spatial reasoning skills, Dr. Martinez explained during a research presentation. The irregularities and challenges built into each structure seem to promote cognitive development in ways that standardized playground equipment cannot match. The research findings opened new avenues for the program's expansion. School districts began incorporating treehouse designs into their outdoor learning environments, recognizing the educational value alongside the recreational benefits. Teachers reported that children who struggled with traditional classroom learning often thrived in the elevated, informal environment of the treehouses. Marcus found himself consulting on installations for specialized populations, including children with autism spectrum disorders and physical disabilities. Each project required careful adaptation of the basic design principles to serve specific needs, while maintaining the essential character that made the spaces appealing to all children. The installation at Rainbow Valley School for Special Needs Children presented unique challenges. The structure needed to accommodate wheelchairs and mobility aids, while still providing the sense of adventure and elevation that defined the treehouse experience. Working with occupational therapists and special education experts, Marcus and Diana's team created a multi-level design with ramps, lifts, and varied accessibility options. Every child deserves to experience the magic of being up in a tree, explained Jennifer Walsh, the school's director. This installation gives our students opportunities for independence and adventure that they rarely find elsewhere. The specialized installations became some of the program's most rewarding projects. Watching children who faced daily physical or cognitive challenges experience the joy and confidence that came from mastering the treehouse environment reinforced the universal appeal of well-designed play spaces. International interest in the program led to installations in 12 countries, each requiring adaptation to local materials, climate conditions, and cultural preferences. The treehouse, built in rural Kenya, used local hardwoods and traditional construction techniques, while the installation in urban Tokyo incorporated earthquake-resistant engineering and minimal space grass utilization. These international projects revealed the universal nature of children's play needs while highlighting the importance of cultural sensitivity in design. What worked in suburban America required thoughtful modification for different contexts, but the core principles of authentic, child-centered design translated across all cultural boundaries. Marcus's travels for these international installations provided him with perspectives he'd never anticipated when he first climbed into his backyard oak tree. Watching children in diverse cultures respond to similar design elements confirmed his belief that good play-space design transcended geographic and cultural differences. The program's 10th anniversary celebration brought together representatives from all 847 installations completed to date. Held in Marcus's hometown, the event showcased the evolution from his original pallet and rope creation to a sophisticated network of community play spaces serving over 250,000 children annually. Lily, now 18 and preparing for college with plans to study architecture and community development, served as the keynote speaker for the anniversary celebration. Her presentation traced the program's history from her childhood perspective, emphasizing how her father's simple promise had grown into something that touched children's lives across the globe. "My dad didn't set out to change the world," she told the audience of designers, community leaders, and foundation supporters. "He just wanted to keep a promise to his daughter. But he built something with love, instead of just following rules. And that made all the difference." As the celebration concluded and guests departed to return to their communities, Marcus and Diana stood beneath the original treehouse, now weathered by a decade of use but still sturdy and inviting. The structure had been carefully maintained and occasionally updated, but it remained fundamentally unchanged from the professionally rebuilt version that had served as the program's prototype. "Did you ever imagine it would become this big?" Diana asked, gesturing toward the banners and displays from the anniversary celebration. Marcus shook his head, chuckling at the magnitude of what had grown from his weekend carpentry project. "I just wanted to build my daughter a treehouse. Everything else has been one surprise after another." The program's future held even more ambitious goals. Plans were underway for mobile treehouse units that could serve temporary communities like refugee camps and disaster relief areas. Research partnerships with pediatric hospitals explored therapeutic applications of treehouse design principles for children recovering from trauma or illness. The foundation had also begun developing indoor applications of the design philosophy, creating climbing and play structures for schools and community centers in urban areas where outdoor space was limited. Each adaptation maintained the core principle of respecting children's natural play instincts while accommodating practical constraints. Marcus climbed the rope ladder one final time that evening, settling into the familiar space where it all began. The sounds of the neighborhood settling into nighttime routines created a peaceful backdrop for reflection on the unexpected journey that had transformed his life and touched so many others. From his elevated vantage point, he could see lights and windows throughout the neighborhood, families going about their evening routines, much as he and Lily had done years earlier. Some of those families now lived in communities with treehouse installations inspired by the structure that surrounded him, their children experiencing the same sense of elevated adventure that had made this entire program necessary. The original oak tree continued to grow, its branches reaching higher and spreading wider with each passing year. The treehouse had been designed to accommodate this growth, with adjustable connections and expandable platforms that evolved with their living foundation. The symbiosis between natural growth and human construction seemed to embody the program's core philosophy of working with natural forces rather than against them. As the program entered its second decade, new challenges and opportunities emerged that would test the foundation's ability to maintain its core mission while adapting to changing social needs. The digital revolution had transformed childhood in ways that made physical play spaces even more crucial, yet also more difficult to promote in a world increasingly dominated by screens and virtual experiences. Marcus found himself speaking at technology conferences, an unlikely advocate for unplugged play in environments dominated by Silicon Valley executives and startup entrepreneurs. His message remained consistent. Children needed authentic physical challenges and real-world problem-solving opportunities that no virtual experience could replicate. You can't download the feeling of wind in your face when you're 15 feet off the ground, he told a gathering of tech industry leaders in San Francisco. You can't simulate the satisfaction of solving a real engineering problem with your hands and basic tools. These experiences are irreplaceable, and they're becoming endangered. The tech industry's response surprised him. Rather than dismissing his message as anti-progress, many leaders recognized the value of balance between digital and physical experiences. Several major technology companies began funding treehouse installations for their corporate campuses, creating spaces where employees' children could engage in unstructured play while their parents worked. The Google campus installation became a showcase for innovative design thinking. Working within strict corporate safety requirements while maintaining authenticity required creative solutions that pushed the program's design principles in new directions. The resulting structure incorporated sustainable materials, energy-generating elements, and subtle technology integration that enhanced rather than replaced natural play experiences. We want our employees' children to understand that technology should serve human needs, not replace human experiences, explained Rebecca Chen, Google's Director of Family Services and Diana's distant cousin, who had facilitated the corporate partnership. This treehouse teaches them that some of the most important problems are solved with imagination and persistence, not algorithms. The corporate installations opened new funding streams that allowed the foundation to expand its work in underserved communities. For every corporate project, the foundation committed to building 3 installations in low-income neighborhoods, maintaining its core mission while leveraging commercial partnerships for maximum impact. The contrast between corporate and community installations revealed important insights about children's universal needs across socioeconomic boundaries. Wealthy children with access to elaborate toys and structured activities responded to the treehouse environment with the same enthusiasm as children from resource-limited communities. The hunger for authentic challenge and unstructured exploration transcended economic circumstances. Dr. Eleanor Rodriguez, a sociologist studying the program's impact across different communities, documented these patterns in her longitudinal research. Children from all backgrounds share fundamental needs for physical challenge, creative expression, and autonomous play, she observed. The Treehouse environments satisfy these needs in ways that traditional playgrounds and commercial play centers cannot match. Her research revealed that children who regularly use treehouses showed increased resilience, better conflict resolution skills, and more sophisticated understanding of risk assessment compared to peers who relied primarily on conventional play equipment. The slightly dangerous, unpredictable nature of treehouse play appeared to teach valuable life skills that sterile, over-engineered playgrounds failed to develop. These findings influenced policy discussions about childhood development and community planning. Several states began revising playground safety regulations to allow for more challenging and engaging play equipment, using the Treehouse program's safety record as evidence that calculated risks could be managed without compromising child welfare. The regulatory changes enabled even more innovative installations. The Treehouse, built for the children's ward at Seattle Children's Hospital, incorporated therapeutic elements designed by occupational therapists and child psychologists. Patients recovering from surgery or illness could engage in graduated physical challenges that supported their rehabilitation while providing psychological benefits from elevated play experiences. Recovery is as much about rebuilding confidence as healing physically, explained Dr. Michael Park, the hospital's chief of pediatric rehabilitation. When a child who's been bedridden for weeks successfully climbs to the Treehouse platform, they're reclaiming their sense of capability and independence. The hospital installation required the most sophisticated safety systems ever integrated into a Treehouse design. Emergency communication devices, fall protection systems, and medical monitoring capabilities were seamlessly incorporated without compromising the essential character of authentic play. The project demonstrated that even the most challenging environments could accommodate the program's core principles with sufficient creativity and resources. International expansion continued with installations in refugee camps and post-conflict zones, where children face trauma that conventional therapeutic approaches struggled to address. The Treehouse environments provided spaces for processing difficult experiences through play, offering healing opportunities that traditional counseling methods couldn't always reach. The installation at Zatari refugee camp in Jordan served children who had fled the Syrian conflict, many carrying psychological wounds from experiences no child should endure. Working with international aid organizations and local community leaders, Marcus and Diana's team created a structure that honored both the program's design principles and Islamic cultural values. Children here have seen too much adult conflict, explained Amira Hassan, a Syrian teacher working in the camp's educational programs. The Treehouse gives them a place to be children again, to play games that have nothing to do with war or displacement. The camp installation required innovative approaches to materials and construction in an environment where resources were severely limited and permanent structures were discouraged by host country policies. The resulting design used modular components that could be disassembled and relocated while providing stable, engaging play experiences for children facing uncertain futures. The success of the refugee camp installation led to partnerships with UNICEF and other international organizations focused on children's welfare in crisis situations. The foundation developed rapid deployment protocols for emergency situations, creating play spaces that could be established quickly in disaster zones or conflict areas where children's normal support systems had been disrupted. Hurricane Maria's devastation of Puerto Rico provided the first major test of these emergency response capabilities. Within weeks of the storm, Marcus found himself leading a team of volunteers in establishing temporary tree houses using hurricane-damaged trees as anchor points. The installations provided both practical gathering spaces and psychological healing opportunities for communities struggling to rebuild. After everything was destroyed, seeing children laughing and playing in the trees again gave us hope that life would return to normal, remembered Maria Santos, a San Juan elementary school principal whose building had been severely damaged. The Treehouse became our community center, our meeting place, our symbol that we would survive and rebuild. The Puerto Rico installations became permanent fixtures as communities rebuilt, incorporating lessons learned from emergency deployment into long-term community development plans. The experience demonstrated that crisis situations could actually accelerate positive community changes when approached with appropriate resources and community-centered design thinking. As the program's reputation grew, unexpected applications emerged that extended its influence beyond traditional play spaces. Urban planners began incorporating Treehouse design principles into broader community development projects, creating elevated walkways, observation platforms, and community gathering spaces that served multiple age groups while maintaining child-friendly accessibility. The transformation of Detroit's Corktown neighborhood included several Treehouse-inspired structures that served as focal points for community revitalization efforts. Former vacant lots became pocket parks centered around elevated play and gathering spaces that brought together residents across age and ethnic boundaries. The treehouses aren't just for kids, observed Detroit City Councilwoman Jennifer Washington. They'd become places where neighbors meet, where community meetings happen, where people feel connected to something positive in their neighborhood. The urban applications required careful attention to different types of trees and growing conditions than the program had typically encountered. Working with urban forestry experts, the foundation developed new techniques for utilizing city trees that faced environmental stresses unknown in suburban and rural settings. The most ambitious urban project took shape in New York City's Brooklyn Bridge Park, where a treehouse installation incorporated views of the Manhattan skyline into a design that served thousands of visitors. Annually, the structure's elevated platforms provided unique perspectives on the city while creating intimate spaces for family interaction within one of the world's busiest metropolitan areas. In a city where children often feel dwarfed by massive buildings and urban infrastructure, the treehouse gives them a space where they can feel elevated and empowered, explains Sarah Kim, the park's director of Children's CAME. Programming. They're still in the city, but they're above it, looking down on the adult world from their own special vantage point. The Brooklyn installation became a pilgrimage site for architects and urban planners studying community-centered design approaches. Its success influenced park development projects across the country, with several major cities commissioning treehouse installations as centerpieces for new or renovated recreational facilities. Corporate partnerships expanded beyond technology companies to include retailers, financial services firms, and healthcare organizations that recognize the value of supporting authentic childhood development. The program's corporate advisory board included executives who had experienced its benefits firsthand as parents and wanted to extend those opportunities to broader communities. Walmart's commitment to funding 50 installations in rural communities over 5 years reflected the company's recognition that healthy childhood development supported long-term community stability and economic growth. The installations were strategically placed in areas where retail development required strong local communities to succeed. Investing in children's play spaces is investing in community futures, explained David Martinez, Walmart's Director of Community Development. Strong communities create the conditions for business success, and authentic play experiences help create strong communities. The corporate funding model evolved to include maintenance endowments that ensured long-term sustainability for each installation. Rather than simply building structures and moving on, the foundation developed ongoing relationships with communities that included regular maintenance, upgrade programs, and adaptation services as local needs changed. Training programs for local maintenance crews created employment opportunities in communities where economic prospects were often limited. The specialized skills required for treehouse construction and maintenance provided career pathways that combined traditional building trades with innovative design thinking. Marcus found particular satisfaction in these training programs, where he could share not just technical knowledge, but also the philosophy of authentic, community-centered construction. Many program graduates went on to establish their own treehouse construction businesses, spreading the program's influence far beyond the foundation's direct reach. Teaching someone to build a treehouse isn't just about carpentry techniques, Marcus explained to a group of trainees in rural Mississippi. It's about understanding what communities need and listening to the people who will actually use what you're building. The 20th anniversary of Marcus's original treehouse construction approached with the foundation managing over 2,000 installations, serving more than 500,000 children annually. The program had evolved from a weekend carpentry project into a recognized methodology for community development, childhood education, and therapeutic intervention. Lily, now working as an architect specializing in community-centered design, had taken increasing responsibility for the foundation's strategic direction. Her childhood experience of watching amateur vision transform into professional impact provided unique insights into maintaining authenticity while scaling operations. The danger in any successful program is losing sight of what made it work in the first place, she reflected during a foundation board meeting. We have to stay connected to that original impulse, that simple desire to create something meaningful for children. Under her leadership, the foundation launched a grassroots initiative encouraging families to build their own tree houses using simplified plans and locally available materials. The Backyard Builder program provided design guidance and safety training while maintaining the DIY spirit that had inspired the original project. The initiative created a network of amateur builders who shared experiences, solutions, and innovations through online communities and regional gatherings. Their collective creativity generated design improvements and cost-saving techniques that the professional team incorporated into future installations. Marcus climbed down from the treehouse as darkness approached, leading Lily and her friends to their games for a few more minutes before bedtime. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new communities to serve, new children to consider in the ongoing work of creating authentic play spaces. But tonight, he was simply a father whose weekend carpentry project had somehow changed the world, one carefully placed nail at a time. The evening sounds of his neighborhood settling into nighttime routines now included the distant laughter of children in tree houses across multiple continents. Each elevated play session carrying forward the essential truth that Marcus had discovered 2 decades earlier. Children deserved spaces that respected their intelligence, honored their need for challenge, and provided authentic opportunities for growth, discovery, and joy. The Foundation's research division had grown into a respected institution in its own right, partnering with universities and think tanks to study the long-term impacts of authentic play experiences on human-grade development. Dr. Martinez's original studies had expanded into longitudinal research, following children who had grown up with treehouse access into their teenage and adult years. The preliminary findings were remarkable. Young adults who had regular access to treehouse play environments during childhood showed higher rates of entrepreneurship, more creative problem-solving approaches, and greater confidence in physical bias challenges compared to control groups. They were more likely to pursue careers in fields requiring spatial reasoning and hands-on problem-solving, from engineering and architecture to skilled trades and artistic endeavors. The correlation between early treehouse experiences and later innovation capacity is striking, reported Dr. James Liu, the Foundation's Director of Developmental Research. Children who learn to navigate irregular, challenging play environments appear to develop cognitive flexibility that serves them throughout their lives. These findings attracted attention from educational institutions seeking to understand how physical play experiences could enhance academic outcomes. Several prominent universities began incorporating treehouse installations into their childhood development research facilities, creating controlled environments where the relationship between play and learning could be studied systematically. Harvard's Graduate School of Education established the Marcus Hendricks Center for Authentic Play Research, housed in a facility that included multiple treehouse installations designed for different age groups and research purposes. The center became a destination for educators worldwide, seeking to understand how physical challenge and creative play could be integrated into formal learning environments. Traditional educational approaches often separate physical and cognitive development, treating them as distinct domains, explained Dr. Patricia Williams, the center's founding director. Marcus's treehouse model demonstrates that the most powerful learning happens when these elements are integrated authentically. The center's research influenced educational policy at state and national levels. Several states revised their early childhood education standards to include requirements for challenging outdoor play experiences, using the Foundation's safety protocols and design principles as guidelines for implementation. The policy changes created new markets for treehouse installations in educational settings. School districts that had previously relied on standard playground equipment began commissioning custom installations that served both recreational and educational purposes. Science lessons moved outdoors to platforms where children could observe weather patterns, astronomy, and ecosystem relationships from elevated perspectives. The integration of academic and play experiences required careful collaboration between educators and designers. Each school installation included features that supported curriculum goals while maintaining the essential character of unstructured play. Mathematics concepts were embedded in climbing challenges, social studies lessons incorporated community observation from elevated vantage points, and literature discussions took place in intimate treehouse. Reading nooks. Learning becomes more engaging when it happens in spaces that children find inherently interesting, observed Michelle Park, principal of Roosevelt Elementary in Portland, Oregon, which had received one of the first educational installations. The Treehouse doesn't just supplement our curriculum, it transforms how children approach learning itself. The educational applications attracted international attention from countries seeking to reform their own childhood development approaches. Delegations from Finland, Singapore, South Korea, and New Zealand visited foundation installations to study how authentic play experiences could be integrated into their educational systems. The cultural exchange programs that emerged from these international connections enriched the Foundation's understanding of how universal play needs express themselves across different cultural contexts. Children, in every culture studied, showed similar responses to treehouse environments, but their specific play patterns reflected local traditions and values. The installation in rural Bangladesh required extensive adaptation to local materials and construction techniques while accommodating monsoon weather patterns and community social structures. Working with local craftsmen and community leaders, the design team created a structure that honored traditional building methods while incorporating modern safety and durability standards. Each international project teaches us something new about the relationship between culture and play, reflected Diana Chen during a Foundation board meeting reviewing global expansion efforts. The core human needs are universal, but their expression varies in fascinating ways that make each installation unique. The Bangladesh project became a model for sustainable development approaches that prioritized local capacity building over imported solutions. Rather than shipping materials and expertise from developed countries, the Foundation established training programs that taught local craftsmen treehouse construction techniques using indigenous materials and traditional tools. The approach proved more effective than conventional development models. Communities that built their own installations with technical guidance and financial support showed higher rates of maintenance, adaptation, and expansion compared to projects that relied on external construction teams. The success of the local capacity building model led to partnerships with major international development organizations. The World Bank included treehouse installations in several community development projects, recognizing their value as catalysts for broader social and economic improvements. The installation in rural Kenya became the centerpiece of a comprehensive community development initiative that included health clinics, educational programs, and economic development projects. The Treehouse served as a gathering place where community members planned and coordinated these broader efforts while their children engaged in elevated play experiences. The Treehouse became our community parliament, explained Grace Wanjiku, a local teacher who had helped coordinate the installation process. Important decisions got made while parents watched their children play safely above us. It created a natural environment for community building. The community development applications attracted attention from urban planners working on neighborhood revitalization projects in American cities. The model of using play installations as catalysts for broader community engagement proved applicable to diverse urban challenges from vacant lot conversion to social cohesion building. The installation in Chicago's Bronzeville neighborhood anchored a comprehensive approach to addressing urban blight and social isolation. The treehouse construction process engaged residents across age and ethnic lines, creating relationships that sustained ongoing community improvement efforts. The project required innovative approaches to urban safety and security concerns while maintaining the openness that made treehouse environments welcoming to all children. Collaboration with local police, community organizations, and resident leaders produced security protocols that protected the installation without creating fortress-like barriers that would undermine its craft. Community building purpose. Safety in urban environments comes from community engagement, not from walls and locks, observed Officer Carlos Rivera, the Chicago Police Department's community liaison for the project. The Treehouse gives people a reason to be present and invested in their neighborhood, which creates natural security. The urban installations required different maintenance approaches than rural or suburban projects. The foundation developed partnerships with local workforce development programs that trained unemployed residents in specialized treehouse maintenance skills, creating employment opportunities while ensuring long-term installation sustainability. The maintenance training programs became pathways to broader career development in construction and community development fields. Several program graduates established small businesses providing treehouse construction and maintenance services, spreading the foundation's influence through market mechanisms rather than direct programming. The entrepreneurial outcomes aligned with the foundation's evolving mission to create sustainable change rather than dependent relationships. By the program's 25th anniversary, over 300 independent businesses worldwide provided treehouse-related services, creating an informal network that extended the foundation's reach far beyond its direct programming capacity. Marcus found deep satisfaction in these entrepreneurial developments, which reflected his original DIY spirit scaled to global proportions. The transformation from weekend carpenter to international consultant had been remarkable, but the emergence of independent practitioners carrying forward the work felt like the program's true measure of success. The best compliment we can receive is when someone builds a treehouse without us, Marcus told a gathering of foundation supporters celebrating the quarter-century milestone. Every independent builder, every community that takes ownership of their installation, every child who grows up to create play spaces for the next generation proves that we've succeeded in spreading something that can sustain itself. The anniversary celebration brought together representatives from all 247 installations completed to date, creating the largest gathering of treehouse advocates in history. The event showcased innovations and adaptations that had emerged from local communities, many of which surpassed the original foundation designs in creativity and effectiveness. The community innovations ranged from solar-powered lighting systems developed by high school students to sophisticated water collection systems designed by environmental engineering students. The organic evolution of treehouse designs through community input had produced a library of solutions that the foundation incorporated into future installations worldwide. Lily's keynote address at the anniversary celebration reflected on the personal journey that had paralleled the program's growth. "I spent my entire conscious life watching this idea evolve and spread," she told the international audience. "What amazes me most is how many different ways people have found to honor the essential spirit while adapting to their unique circumstances." Her remarks highlighted the delicate balance between maintaining core principles and allowing local adaptation that had become central to the foundation's operational philosophy. Too much standardization would undermine the authentic community engagement that made installations successful, while too much variation could dilute the safety and effectiveness standards that protected children and sustained community support. The challenge of scale while maintaining authenticity had required constant organizational evolution. The foundation's current structure included regional offices on 6 continents, each with authority to adapt designs and procedures to local conditions, while maintaining connection to the global network of CAS's expertise and resources. The regional approach had produced remarkable innovations that enriched the entire program. The African Regional Office developed techniques for incorporating fruit trees into treehouse designs, creating installations that provided both play experiences and nutritional resources for communities facing food security challenges. The Asian Regional Office pioneered integration of traditional arts and crafts into treehouse environments, creating spaces where children learned cultural traditions while engaging in elevated play. The installations became venues for intergenerational knowledge transfer that strengthened community cultural identity. The European Regional Office focused on sustainability innovations, developing carbon-neutral construction techniques and renewable energy integration that made treehouses net positive environmental contributors. Their installations served as demonstrations of how community infrastructure could address climate change while serving human needs. The diversity of regional approaches reflected the program's core insight that authentic solutions emerged from local knowledge and community engagement, rather than imposed expertise. The Foundation's role had evolved from direct service provider to facilitator of local capacity and innovation. The shift toward facilitation, rather than direct implementation, allowed the Foundation to serve far more communities with existing resources while building sustainable local capacity for ongoing program development. The model proved applicable to other community development challenges, influencing approaches to healthcare delivery, educational programming, and economic development initiatives. Marcus's role had evolved correspondingly from hands-on builder to strategic advisor and philosophical guide for a global movement. His speaking engagements now included international conferences on community development, childhood education, and sustainable design, where his insights influenced policymakers and program developers worldwide. The transformation from local carpenter to global influence remained surreal to Marcus, but the core motivation remained unchanged. Every speech, every consultation, every strategic decision traced back to the same fundamental commitment: creating authentic opportunities for children to experience challenge, growth, and joy in safe, supportive environments. Standing in his backyard as evening approached, looking up at the original treehouse that had inspired everything that followed, Marcus could hear the distant sounds of children playing in elevated spaces across the globe. The oak tree that had supported his daughter's dreams 25 years earlier now anchored a network of play experiences that touched millions of young lives annually. The tree itself had grown substantially, its canopy now extending well beyond the original treehouse footprint. The installation had been expanded twice to accommodate the tree's growth, while maintaining the essential character that made it special. The symbiotic relationship between natural growth and human construction continued to embody the program's fundamental philosophy of working with, rather than against, natural forces. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as the Foundation prepared for its next phase of development. Plans were underway for installations in Antarctica research stations, space exploration facilities, and underwater research habitats where children of scientists and support staff needed play experiences adapted to the most extreme environments on Earth and beyond. The extreme environment projects push the boundaries of treehouse design while maintaining connection to the essential principles that had made the program successful. Even in environments where trees were impossible, the core insights about authentic challenge, community engagement, and child-centered design remained applicable and transformative. As darkness settled over his neighborhood, Marcus climbed the familiar rope ladder one final time that day, settling into the space where his journey as an amateur builder had begun a quarter-century earlier. The evening sounds included the distant laughter of children in treehouses across multiple continents, each elevated play session carrying forward the essential truth he had discovered. That authentic love, expressed through genuine attention to children's real needs, could indeed change the world in ways both profound and enduring.